On a warm May evening, Mr. Johnson's family sat down to dinner. Everyone was in excellent spirits, and only Mr. Johnson himself frowned from time to time. "What's the matter with you, dear?" his wife asked, not understanding why her husband was in a bad mood. "There was an outrageous incident today," the man said with a wince. "Right outside my office door, a beggar with a baby in her arms jumped up to me and started babbling something incomprehensible. It was disgusting." "But dear," said Mrs. Johnson softly, "you can't judge her for that. Not everybody is as lucky as we are. Maybe we should have given the poor girl some change." "Absolutely not," Mr. Johnson interrupted. "It's enough that this beggar has already dragged a small child into the streets. I don't want to be the one point out her failure. If my daughter sees how easy it is for beggars to get money, I worry in the future she will follow in their footsteps instead of earning an honest living." At that moment, someone pounded loudly on the door, and Mr. Johnson, throwing his napkin on the table in annoyance, went to open it. On the porch, the man saw the same little girl who had been in the beggar's arms in the middle of the day. The girl was crying, smearing tears down her face, and mumbling inaudibly, "Help!" "What on earth is that?" Mr. Johnson asked, gasping with indignation before slamming the door. "There is no escape from these people." He again sat down at the table. The knocking became even more desperate, yet Mr. Johnson only began to eat unfazed. The hushed family members sluggishly continued their meal, staring at their plates. Suddenly there was the sound of breaking glass, and a stone flew into the room. The incident stunned the entire family. Mr. Johnson, in a fit of rage, jumped out into the street, hoping to catch the intruders. But he came across something much worse. He saw a woman laying on the sidewalk. Her eyes were closed, and her face was pale white. A little girl stood beside her, crying. Mr. Johnson stepped closer and saw a plate of sweet pie flying off to the curb, shattered into pieces. The woman turned out to be a new neighbor of the Johnsons, named Keene. Her family had only recently arrived in the United States from Japan, and the woman had not yet learned enough English to speak well. Seeing Mr. Johnson outside the office this morning, Keene recognized her neighbor and walked over to meet him, but failed to explain her family's circumstances. In the afternoon, a relative had told her about the American tradition of treating the neighbors to a pie, and Keene decided to make another attempt. She baked a pie, took her daughter by the hand, and set off. Unfortunately, she turned out to be in such poor health, and as she approached the door, her neighbor, Keene, suddenly fell ill. Her blood pressure had dropped, and fatigue from the long move swept over her. The daughter tried to call for help, and when Mr. Johnson slammed the door in front of her, she threw a rock through the window in despair. Sometimes a whisper is enough to come to someone's aid, but often we are deaf to other people's requests for help, and only a thrown rock lets us know that someone is in desperate need of our help.